In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through all the steps you need to do in Photoshop to set up your file, to import images, to work with the layers that you need to work with, and specifically we're going to look at how to select parts of the image using the lasso tool. So the first thing we need to do is understand the difference between a vector program and a raster program. Now, Illustrator was a vector program, and those points that are created inside of Illustrator allowed us to use math to make the image bigger or smaller and always keep a good resolution. In raster-based editing, we only have a certain amount of pixels we can work with. So if we want an image to look really clear, we have to start with a big image and make it smaller. Because if we start with a small image and make it bigger, then we will, as we make it bigger, we'll see the individual dots of color making up that picture get bigger and bigger and bigger. To show you, look at this image here of this piece of fruit. On the left side, you can see something that you might work with in Illustrator. It's a drawing of that fruit. If we made this bigger or smaller, it would never lose its resolution. On the right hand side is the raster image, and in Photoshop these are the type of images that we're going to get to work with. If you were to blow this image up, it would get much more pixelated because you would see the individual dots of color. To give you a better idea, here's sort of a model or depiction of what the difference between vector and raster is. If I were to move away from this, the raster image would look a little bit clearer, but the closer you get to it, the more pixelated it becomes. Pixels are the real difference here. You can see as well that different file types are used to share and work with vector and raster images. So again, we worked with vector in Illustrator, and now we're going to be working with raster in Photoshop. Just to go over one more time what we're going to do, we're going to be creating a scene using 3 different images, and those images can be retrieved by clicking on the link inside of the canvas instructions. If you click here where it says hamburger, restaurant, and puppet, it will open a Google Drive folder, and you can download these individual images and then open them in Illustrator. So you'll need to download them from here onto whatever computer you're working on, and then you can upload them to or open them in Photoshop. Let's switch over to Photoshop. I'm going to and just to illustrate again what the difference is working with raster, if I were to zoom in here, see how you can see all the individual dots of color. This is like if you got your face right up to your television set and you could see each little tiny dot of color. That's what you'd be seeing. You'd see all the individual pixels, and as we zoom out and we get more and more of those pixels in the viewable area, the picture becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. And if we go all the way out, you can see what the picture looks like. If you get too far out, if you're zoomed too far out, you can always hit Control 0 to go full screen with the canvas that you're working with. Alright, you see where we're going with this, so I'm going to go home and I'm going to click on New File. And just like in Illustrator, over here on the right hand side there's a preset details area. We're going to change this to inches. We're going to choose that postcard size image, 6 inches wide by 4 inches tall. A screen resolution size would be about 72 pixels per inch, and something that we might want to print would be more like 300 pixels per inch. We're gonna roughly split the difference here and do 150 pixels per inch. Make sure it's pixels per inch. Also make sure you're in RGB color mode, and we're going to use transparent background. Now we could choose white, black, or another color, or even a custom background, but we want to choose transparent and have no color at all in the background. Now how does the computer show us transparent pixels that should be able to be seen through? Well, they can't. So what they do is they give you this checkerboard pattern. This is meant to not simulate, but meant to indicate that there are no pixels of color in this canvas yet. Also, you'll notice down here on the lower right, your layers area. We're going to be definitely using the layers area as we work on this project. The other thing we're going to do is right up here under the lasso tool. We're going to start with this free lasso tool. We're going to also use the polygon, the magnetic lasso. We may even use some of these other tools here, like the different selection options, and we will most definitely be using the object selection tool. So let's get started. We need to get those images in here. So I'm going to go to File and Open, and I'm going to go to where I downloaded those images, and I can bring in each one individually or all at once. I'm going to click on Open, and you'll see across the top here each image opened in its own tab, its own file. So here's the one we're working on. Here's the restaurant image that we want. Now later we're going to be copying and pasting images, but for now this actual layer, even though it's locked, we can grab this, drag it over to our canvas, and drop it right on the page. Once we do that, we grab this move tool and we can move this all around. But what I need to do, it's a little bit bigger than the canvas itself. So I'm going to position it on here, and I'm going to hit Control T, and that gives me these resizing handles, and I'm going to resize until it's exactly the size of my canvas, and then I'm just going to hit the Enter key. Alright, there's our background. Now this file that we started with, we don't need this anymore. I already have it in here. So I'm going to go ahead and close this one just to keep my workspace a little bit more clear. Alright, next we've got this hamburger, and if we just hit Control C, go over to our scene and hit Control V, you can see that the hamburger got pasted in there just fine, but it also came with the white background. Now we don't want that, so I'm going to go ahead and drag this down to the trash. I'm going to go back to the hamburger image, and first of all, let's use this first lasso tool, where we're just going to try and capture these pixels. I'm just dragging, and I'm going to do this a little loosely just so we can go quickly. I'm just dragging around the area that I want to select, and I can get pretty close if I take my time. Control C, Control V, and look at that. I've got the hamburger in there pretty well, but I got all this extra white, all these extra white pixels that I need to be more careful about getting rid of. So let me go ahead and try again. This time I'm going to switch over to the polygon lasso tool. Now my previous selection is still here, so what I do is hit Control D, and that makes what these little crawling ant looking things that are indicating the selection area. If I hit Control D, it deselects them. Alright, now using this polygon tool, I get to make individual lines. Now we did this in Illustrator a little bit, and all you have to do is do it kind of like a dot to dot, and every time you click, you get a new line. The more clicks you make, the more fine the line. If I drag the line out, then the rougher the line. But if I do a lot of clicks at a lot of points, I can get pretty precise control. Again, this is not the method we're going to use, so I'm just going to go quickly, close the selection, Control C. You can see over here, Control V. I pasted it in. Not exactly the way I wanted it, although you could see the first part here that I had worked on. I was doing pretty well. Let's try the magnetic lasso tool. So again, Control D to deselect. This time I'm going to use magnetic, but as I draw, I'm going to draw like I did with the first lasso tool, but now Adobe is going to use an algorithm to try and guess which pixels I'm trying to capture, and it's actually magnetically sticking to the line that it thinks I actually want to take. And this does a pretty good job. In a lot of cases where you have a high contrast background like this might be all you really need to do. There are definitely some places where you'd want to use this. This is still not the one we're going to use today, but you can see Control C, Control V. That looks pretty good. We did a pretty good job with that. I could use that right now and be really happy with it. However, I'm gonna go back here and use one more method. Control D to deselect. This time I'm going to use this object selection tool. Now this is the one where Adobe has created an algorithm that tries to just guess what object you're trying to select, and it does the selection for you. In this case, I'm going to just drag over the hamburger. I'm going to drag a box. I'm going to wait and let it do its thing. Now you can see it's actually done the selection, and it's done a better job than I was able to do with just the with even the magnetic lasso. So I'm going to Control C, and I'm going to go back over here and Control V, and now you can see this. Whoops, I shouldn't have moved that piece. This is the cleanest selection we've made so far, and I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down. Now I can make this appropriately sized for the image, or I can make it comically large depending on the effect I'm going for. In this case, I think it'd be funny to make it really big, so I'll make it really big. Just hit enter. Okay, now we don't need this one anymore. We'll leave it in the image, but we don't really need this one because we got our nice clean image over here. You can see down here in the layers area, every time I've added an image, it's added a new layer, and as I turn those off and on, you can see just which parts they are. And I can actually rename these if I want to get more organized, but I don't have too many things to worry about right here. So I'm going to delete the hamburger now and just keep it in my scene, and I'm going to go here to this excuse me, to this puppet image. Now this time I'm going to try to use that object selection tool, but you see the background this time is very it's not a single color, it's multicolored. So we're just gonna have to see how well we can do, and actually it does pretty well, but I have some extra stuff here that it selected that it thought was part of the picture that really isn't. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave what it's selected, but I'm also gonna go here to the polygon lasso tool. And if I hold shift, I get a plus sign next to my cursor. If I hold alt, then I get a minus sign. So what I can do is, for instance, if I want to get rid of something, I'll hold alt and get that minus sign, and then I'll just create a selection, and it takes that out of the main selection. I have a big area here that I want to get rid of, so I'm going to go ahead and hold alt. I'm going to go all the way around this area here. Doesn't take too long. And I'm just going to get rid of that stuff. Let's see if I missed anything else. Oh, I've got one more couple little sections here. Let's zoom into this. Now in this case, I can actually use this rectangle and hold shift to add an area. See, I get the plus sign there, and I'll just click and drag over that, and then if I hold alt, and I can get rid of this little area here, just cleans it up. And then right here I got this last little bit. I think I'm going to go to just my regular lasso tool, I'm going to hold Alt because I want to get rid of this area, but I'm just going to kind of draw like I was using a pencil. And there we go. Okay, I have a perfect, somewhat perfect selection of the puppet, and I'm going to hit Control C to copy it, and I'm going to go over here and Control V to paste it in. Alright, so that looks great. Let's shrink him down and fit him into the scene. I can put him anywhere in the scene I want to. I'm going to make him sit here on this chair, and I'm going to make him tinier, you know, a little tinier than the, just be a tiny little guy, gonna eat that giant burger. So I'll get his booty on here, sitting right where it should be in the chair. Okay, this looks pretty good. If I zoom in, you can see it gets more pixelated as we move in. We did a pretty good job of cutting those out. Now, there's a problem. If this puppet were really in this setting, you wouldn't be able to see this part of his chest because the table would be in the way, and this foot would probably be on the other side of the table leg. So, it looks like there might be two table legs there, yeah. Okay, so what we need to do is we're going to get rid of parts of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my lasso, my polygon lasso, and I'm going to draw the spot where I think the table leg would cover the puppet's foot. And I'm just going to close that little shape there. Now, because it's already, if I wasn't on the correct layer, then this wouldn't work. But I'm actually on the puppet layer right now, and if I right click and I go layer via cut, well, actually that didn't work. Hold on, let's try this again. Layer via cut. Oh, that didn't work. Oh yes, it did. Okay, so it worked, but I need to, now I'm going to click the little eyeball to make it disappear. You see that? So I cut out the part that I thought would be hidden behind that leg, that front leg there. It's kind of hard to tell, and it gets hidden away. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing over here with the table, but I want to be able to see, so I'm just going to make Pinocchio, or the puppet, go away for a minute so I can draw using polygons just around the table where I think we're needing to get rid of the puppet. I'll bring the puppet back, I'll make sure I have that layer selected, and then I'll right click and layer via cut, and then I can make that new layer invisible. So I didn't actually get rid of the piece, but I did make that piece invisible. So now I got my puppet, I've got my comically large burger. Now, normally I would export this file, but for this assignment, I want to see this layer work that you've done. So just take a screenshot of the whole screen and turn in the screenshot for this assignment. And that's it.